All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Good morning, everybody. It is the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister filling in. I've got Albert alongside and some special guests today as well. Finally, after months and months of hassling this woman, she has agreed to come on the show, and I think we might get her for a full hour. Pat Thurston is on the show today. David Katz is on the show today, the former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, will be here in the second hour, and we'll talk about all the legal cases. And boy, are there a lot of cases, a lot of action heating up with judges trying to maybe finally make their ruling stick when it comes to Trump. So we'll get into all of that today. Mark Thompson will be back on Friday, so he will be back tomorrow. But today we're going to have a lot of fun while Mark's away. I got to say, Albert, you ready for all this?
Yeah, I'm ready. We got a lot on the show today. We have a lot on the show tomorrow, so we'll see if we could get through it with Mark. But
Mark Thompson, absolutely. All right, well let's first dig into it, because the first story I want to talk about is this flap between President Trump and Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Yeah, this is a guy that Trump appointed way back when, I think in 2017, and they've kind of come to blows here and there, and now things are really heating up. So before we get into that, let me bring on Pat Thurston. Many of you from the Bay Area will remember Pat as a former talk show host at KGO Radio. She hasn't just been on KGO, though. She was a talk show host well before that. She's a beloved figure and always has the most fiery, wonderful opinions. Pat Thurston, everybody.
Hi. You know, when you mentioned Mark, I thought Mark was going to be your guest.
No, Mark's not going to be
that. That would be great. Have Mark Thompson as a guest. Would that be fun? I love that idea.
Then maybe I could be in control of him, and I don't think he's.
No one controls Mark Thompson.
Which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
No, it doesn't work that way. Welcome, Pat. It's been too long. I'm so excited to see your face. Wow, this is great.
I looked it up, and the last time I was on with you guys, it was December 21st.
Of what, 2024?
Of what?
Of what year? That long. It seems like forever ago.
It was last year.
Let's talk about the Fed Chair Jerome Powell drawing the anger of Trump. He said yesterday, Mr. Powell, that Trump's tariff policies really were putting the economy into danger here and threat. And so this morning, Trump lashes out at Jerome Powell. He says the U.S. central bank is lagging behind its European counterpart, the European Central Bank, which is cutting interest rates for the 7th time and this last year. And this is what Trump said. Jerome Powell of the Fed, who was always too late and wrong, in caps, yesterday issued a report which was another typical complete mess. Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. So now we have Trump calling for Jerome Powell to lose his job. And that, according to some economists, could tank the economy even faster, as if things weren't going downhill fast enough.
And it's also illegal.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't have the authority to fire Jerome Powell without there being cause, and cause has to be malfeasance. It cannot be just a difference in policies. Right. However, if the case were to go to the Supreme Court, God knows what will happen, because we have a Supreme Court that is steeped in the corruption. You know what? Let me put it a different way. Whose heads are so far up Trump's butt that they can't see the Constitution from where they are. And that's probably the most disturbing part of this. I saw somebody yesterday, it was an historian, I can't tell you what his name was, but he said that if Trump were president at the founding of our nation, he would have been impeached. He would have been convicted. He may well have been shot. because he is so far outside of the Constitution and establishing himself in a dictatorial way, or in a role more like a king, which of course we abandoned, and that's why we declared our independence, and that's why we instituted a constitution. But he doesn't care. So getting to the Supreme Court should have called Trump out on a number of occasions, and they simply haven't. I think that there should be impeachments of Donald Trump, Clarence Thomas, thank you, Gorsuch, Alito. I think they should all be impeached because they have shown themselves not to be able to be true arbiters of fact. And instead, they're aligning themselves with politics, with this president and whatever he wants to do. And then they put themselves through these pretzel moves to try to comport with the Constitution or find some constitutional justification for it. And, really what they're saying is the Constitution be damned. This is the guy. This is what we want this nation to be. And I think it's really incredibly frightening. It's interesting. I'm taking you really off subject here, but it's interesting that Amy Coney Barrett, that she has in just a few cases, but she has sided with the more constitutionally minded members of the court, what the media calls the liberal wing of the court, but I think they're the constitutionalists. Amy Coney Barrett has sided with them on a few occasions. So has the Chief Justice, John Roberts. But Amy Coney Barrett, who was the darling of MAGAville, they're now attacking her, and she's getting death threats simply because she wants to live up to her commitment to the Constitution. I mean, I think she's nuts on a lot of different issues, women's choice, but even with women's reproductive rights, she has some sense about her. She's not so crazy as these other guys. She doesn't want to take us back to what's that TV show with the
Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah.
It's interesting. You talk about Amy Coney Barrett, and there have been threats, I guess, against her family.
Yeah.
A person in a position of authority who goes against anything that Donald Trump wants finds themselves in a really tough position with threats coming in against their family, against their life. It's a scary time. As a matter of fact, there's Amy Coney Barrett. But as a matter of fact, and it's not just threats to their life, it's also threats to their job. And so you mentioned that, and I know we're going to do this later in the show, but I want to bring it up now because I saw this story about Lisa Murkowski, who says we are all afraid of retaliation by Donald Trump. He has this retribution tour, and it's what he uses to keep people in line. I feel like
she admitted it. I mean, she's admitted that they make certain decisions because they are afraid of that retribution. It seems to me that if you can admit that to yourself and then to the public, the next step for you is to resign because you aren't worth crap.
Well, you're not effective. You can't effectively do your job.
Yeah, you're a United States senator. Your commitment, also your oath, was to the Constitution, again, and to the people. Your commitment was not to an individual man. And if you can't use the immense power that you have in the United States Senate, and instead you're going to kowtow to this guy because you're afraid, well, then you don't deserve that position. She does not deserve that position. And I think it's really important that we start calling out these lawmakers, be they Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Greens, I don't care, whatever they are. What's the new thing? Polycon? No, that wasn't it.
Oh, panicans.
Yeah. Thank you very much. If you're a panic, I don't care whatever you are. If you can't do your job, stand up for your oath and stand against the president of the United States. If the situation warrants it, then you are worthless to the rest of us, and you need to step down and let us put somebody in there who actually will. I mean, these are supposed to be three co-equal branches of government. He is not God. He is not a king. Right now, impeachment proceedings should be underway once again for the third time against Donald Trump. And there should be enough Republicans to actually convict him. We'll see what the midterms bring in terms of changing the numbers so that we can finally bring this guy to heel.
Well, we have video, and I think Albert has video to play for us. But basically, she's saying we are all afraid. This is Murkowski. She says it's quite a statement, but we're in a time and a place where I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm anxious myself about using my voice because retaliation is real. Let's listen.
Part of what I have been doing with my team is just trying to listen as carefully as I can to what is happening and how it is happening and the impacts it is having on the ground. And we're honest up front in saying we don't have all the answers, but we're trying to unlock at different opportunities and in different ways as much as we can. And it is as hard as anything that I have been engaged in the 20 plus years I've been in the Senate.
What do you have to say to people who are afraid or who represent people who are afraid?
We are all afraid, okay? It's quite a statement.
Yeah.
But we are, we're in a time and a place where I don't know, I certainly have not been here before. And I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice. Because retaliation is real, and that's not right. But that's what you've asked me to do. And so I'm going to use my voice to the best of my ability, and sometimes it will be viewed in a way that, well, that's pretty confrontational. And other times it's going to be using my mother's charm that I learned as a young girl and in direct communication with those that I have made relationships with and am able to affect some change that way. But I've got to figure out how I can do my best to help the many who are so anxious and are so afraid.
Thank you. That's good. Yeah, we
maybe
got the
if
point.
she had a little bit of courage, and she doesn't, so she needs to go. I mean, I can't believe what I was just watching. I can't believe that she said all of that. There are 100 members of the United States Senate. The United States Senate is one of the most powerful bodies in the entire world. If they're all afraid, what are they afraid of? One man? They have more power than he does if they actually combine efforts and they use their power. If they use their power instead of giving it away to him, all they have to do is to stand up and say, hey, Mr. President, sir, that's how he says
That's it for your first himself.
and they probably did. Hey, sir, if you don't back off on this, if you don't back off on the tariffs, if you don't back off on your thought to deport even citizens of the United States who you deem to be criminals, if you don't make a step to get this guy back, if you don't leave Harvard alone, if you don't stop threatening the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, we decided to impeach you. That is, in essence, what happened with Richard Nixon. I mean, with Richard Nixon, the crimes were there, but it was a group of Republican politicians. John Rothman will tell you this, and he knows the story better than I. Republican politicians, very conservative, very powerful Republican politicians who met with him in the White House and told him, you don't have the votes. You only have a handful of votes, and we're not among them. You're going to be convicted. You're going to be impeached and you're going to be convicted. And so he resigned as a result, not of the Democrats coming after him. He resigned because the Republicans did. So if the Republicans could find their balls and actually look back and read the oath of office that they took, and they had a come to Jesus moment. I mean, look at some of these people. Look at Ted Cruz. Ugh. I mean, I hate to ask you to do that, but look at this guy. He's not stupid, but he has completely sold his soul to the devil. And I believe that's what a lot of these Republicans have done because they're afraid. Well, they don't have to be. They've got the power in their numbers and in the constitutional authority that has been granted them. So the very fact that they are United States senators should be able to put a little bit of starch in their spines. Let them stand up to this guy. I mean, how do you become such a wuss when you've got that kind of authority?
They care more about the job. I don't know about if it's the ability to make money or have influence about the job, but they care more about that than serving the people, which should have been the whole point of the job in the first place.
Exactly.
Lisa Murkowski said she was unnerved by how quickly the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, which Congress had established, was obliterated by the Trump administration.
Yeah. Okay. What'd she do about it?
She's using her voice, Pat.
No.
She's talking about it now.
She's talking about it now after the fact. She's not. Oh, look at my bra strap showing.
Welcome. I will say this. She says that it's putting America in a very dangerous place because she says you stop believing in the rule of law.
Yeah. Well, she's not using. She's using her voice some, but she's not using her power. What did she do when it came to confirmations? How many confirmations did she oppose? I mean, she's just, I just find it infuriating. And not just among Republicans. I'm also mad at a lot of Democrats. Some of them are attempting to do things the right way. By the way, if I can skip back to Jerome Powell, Donald Trump doesn't have the right to fire him, but why does he want to fire him? For the same reason he wants to fire, or he's going after Chris Krebs now for the same reason he fired Chris Krebs, who he also appointed, because Chris Krebs, who was the cybersecurity czar, said that the election of Joe Biden was the most secure election in American history when Donald Trump was, talking about how it was all rigged.
Don't speak out. Don't say what Trump doesn't want you to say, or he's coming for you.
That's right. And Jerome Powell is merely speaking the truth. Today, I just read a few minutes ago that today mortgage interest rates have already gone up. And that's intended, that is expected to increase. So what Jerome Powell is talking about is the very real economic threat of the policies that Trump is embracing, enforcing, and doing so unilaterally, which is another thing that Lisa Murkowski should be doing something about in the United States Senate. He's not the person who is supposed to be instituting tariffs. Tariffs are supposed to go through the Congress. And so why is she not using her voice? Why isn't she on the floor of the United States Senate right now? Instead of in whatever interview that she was doing, why isn't she there standing up and saying, we're not going to tolerate this? And I expect my Republican colleagues to join me. Why isn't she doing that? Because she's afraid? Then get out of Dodge, ma'am. Get out of Dodge.
On the other hand, it's nice to see someone standing up and speaking the truth instead of these politicians who, as you mentioned, like Cruz, they know what's really up.
Right.
They know what's really happening.
Right.
And in order to preserve their own jobs, their own selves, they bend the knee and they do things that they must know are bad for America.
I agree with you, but that's a pretty low bar to say, okay, so you're willing periodically to use your voice and tell the truth because everybody else is a big freaking liar. That's a low bar to put her above them, but she is above them. I agree with you. I also think they should all be gone because they've abdicated their authority and responsibility. They have given over their authority to Donald Trump. They do whatever Donald Trump, they're rubber stamping anything that Donald Trump wants. And we don't need a United States Senate that's that compliant with a co-equal branch. And in this case, who is so destructive to our entire nation, the entirety of our nation.
You are right about the housing costs rising. There's a new headline this morning saying housing costs climb as the Trump tariffs keep rocking the markets, that springtime home shoppers might feel the impact of this trade war because mortgage rates are seeing their largest 1 week jump in nearly a year. So I thought the reason that voters decided that Trump was a good idea was because he was supposed to bring all the costs down. And I don't really see those voters that wanted the price of eggs and gas and housing to come down feeling too upset about this right now.
I see the numbers increasing of the people who have, Trump remorse syndrome. When it impacts them directly, when they feel it directly. And so some of them are of a mind, oh, well, let's give him time. They're still doing that. Some of them are now already feeling it. They've got family members who've been fired. They're on Social Security. They're afraid of what's going to happen. They can't reach anybody in a Social Security office. They're watching the destruction. They're watching Elon Musk and his Doge people. What's that guy's name? Harry Balls? Sweaty Balls.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, the Doge guy with Elon Musk, the guy with the balls. Somebody.
Oh, Ramaswamy.
No. The guy with the balls. The balls is in his name. I mean, his nickname.
I don't know the balls guy.
Yes, you do. You just wait. Somebody will tell us, and then you're going to go, oh yeah, the balls guy. Yeah, big balls. Thank you. Bing, 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 bing. You win. Thank you so much. Big balls. Yeah, see, they all know big balls.
Yeah, they do. I guess where have I been? Yeah.
Yeah, but what was I saying about? Oh, they're seeing that, and they're seeing him, and many of them realize that he actually is a Nazi. I mean, his whole background, his support of apartheid in South Africa, where he's from, his family members were members of the Nazi Party. I mean, Elon Musk is Nazi through and through. And a lot of the Trump supporters are seeing that, and they don't like Elon. Even the people who continue to support Trump, they don't like Elon. So that's a step in the right direction. And then, Kim, we have the most amazing thing again that is happening with Bernie Sanders.
Oh, yeah. We do have the amazing thing. They are packing stadiums, and people are coming out to support the Fight Oligarchy tour with Bernie Sanders and AOC. And we have a little bit of video that we can play for you. And I think this is really I think it's delicious video. Let's hear.
Delicious.
And right now, he's going after the media. I don't know if any of you saw it. He is now wanting to take away CBS's license because they did a story that criticized him.
I love the guy with the finger.
Oh, my word. CBS criticized him. Oh, let's drive them out of business. How terrible is that? He has sued ABC. He has sued Meta. He has sued the Des Moines Register. This guy cannot take criticism. He can dish it out all right, but he can't take it. And I say to Mr. Trump, if you can't take criticism, get out of the political process. This is a democracy.
There you go. Yeah, I thought that was beautiful. If you can't take it, get out. And isn't that kind of what we teach our kids? The people that can dish it out but can't take it are kind of the icky people that you don't want to be around. Why so many people like him when just on a personal level, I know Bill Maher says he's great in person, but on a personal level, he just doesn't have the social skills. I don't understand that. I mean, he, as we mentioned before, you say one thing against Trump, he's coming after you, but yet he can stand up and say the worst things about people. I'm so glad to see Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez standing up and doing this. I hope that the massive response to it, that filling up these stadiums in red states like Utah and Idaho, is an indicator that maybe for the midterm elections, we'll see some change.
Well, there's also Republicans have had to stop doing their own town halls in their own districts, in the reddest of areas, in the reddest of states, because the people there, their constituents, are calling them out. They're demanding answers, and they're not happy at all. They're not happy with the things that they're hearing about what is going on. And they can't, there's another group of people who can't take the heat. They can't stand it when their constituents actually ask them questions. You know, they want to get like Trump when he had that press conference with the dictator from El Salvador. You know, somebody actually asked him, I think it was the CNN reporter.
Caitlin Collins.
Yeah, Caitlin actually asked him a question that was a good question. And so he wanted the question from the person who was just going to.
Right.
I was about to say something obscene.
He likes the questions couched as a compliment. Right.
Exactly,
that aren't really questions at all.
At all. It just gives him an opportunity. So why is he like this? Why is he a guy who cannot handle criticism? Because he doesn't see himself in the role of a democratically elected president of a constitutional democracy with 3 co-equal branches of government that is there to actually serve the people. He doesn't see himself like that, Cam. He sees this as an opportunity to become wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. He wants to be Vladimir Putin. He doesn't really want to be Kim Jong-il, because that doesn't bring him the kind of money that he wants. He wants the money and he wants the power. The United States is the most powerful country on earth. We are one of the wealthiest countries on earth. But Vladimir Putin has been able to steal the wealth and enrich his oligarchs, you know, within Russia, but also steal the majority of the wealth until he is one of the wealthiest people on the planet. And he wants that. He wants to do exactly that. Think about who he cozies up to. These are the people he admires. You know, he admires Erdogan. He admires Putin, of course. He admires Xi, but only to a certain extent, because he wants Xi to do his bidding as well. So, you know, I think that, I don't think it's a personality flaw. I think this is what he has been striving for. It's why he ran for president this time. And the people who voted for him, although we see the remorse of a great deal of the people we really have to see the remorse from are the people who took the election as a joke, the tech bros. They saw the election as a joke. They wanted to put Kamala Harris in her place. They didn't like the idea of a woman ascending to the presidency. They thought that Trump was just owning the libs, and it was really funny about all the things he said he was going to do. He was going to be a dictator only on day one. Oh, ha, ha, ha. Isn't that just the funniest thing? You know what? We're just going to vote for Donald Trump. And they found reasons to try to justify it, but they weren't serious. They were not serious people, if I can quote Succession. They were not serious people. And so now they are people who are going to be getting the short end of the stick in all of this. They're beginning to realize it. So now the Democrats, I guess one of the mistakes the Democrats made was in campaigning more against Trump than for Democrats. And for a couple of decades now, Democrats have been losing the support of working class people. They've always kind of had a struggle with the farmers, but now the farmers have been screwed. And so farmers are beginning to turn against Trump. That tariffs is one of the reasons for that. But Democrats have to get back to our roots. We have to become the real party of the people. And for a lot of my youth, the Democrats were the party of the people. They were the party of labor. Yeah. And instead, because of, and I mean, this is also convoluted, but because of campaign finance laws, because of the need to have massive sums of money in order to run for election, in order to be successful in election, in order to be able to pay for the advertising and blah, 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 blah. And this goes back to campaign finance laws and Supreme Court decisions, and which all need to be completely redone because this is what the result has been. Yeah. So because of that, Democrats have gone out and tried to woo the billionaire class and in the process have dropped their support for working class Americans. Now, they're far better than the Republicans are, far better than Republicans. But people get pissed off. Oh, the Republicans or the Democrats didn't do this for me. The Democrats didn't do that for you. Well, do you think the Republicans are going to? That's not the point as far as they're concerned. I expected it from the Democrats. I didn't expect it from the Republicans. So I'm going to support the Republicans and give them a chance. Well, you do that. And now the chance is you lose everything. You become a pauper. And all you do is to support the billionaire class in this country. And is that hyperbole? We're going down the road. We're not there yet, but we are sure as hell going down that road.
I love this comment from Alan, who writes, politicians are more afraid of the MAGA base than they are of Trump they help create because they can't control the monster they created like they thought they could.
I think that's an excellent point. And again, it's a reason that Democrats need to have a common voice, that they are there for the people. Now, I also believe this. When we talk about the MAGA base, because Trump is losing support, there's no question about it. You talk about the real hardcore MAGA base. I believe that they're bigots. I was going to say ignorant, and a good percentage of them are ignorant, but not all of them. Some of them know. Elon Musk isn't ignorant. He's ignorant about how government works, but Elon Musk knows what he wants. He knows what he's about.
He's weird. He's just weird and crazy.
Creepy. He's creepy, but he's also a bigot. And so we can't lose sight of the fact that there are people who support Donald Trump because he has given them voice for their bigotry. You know, who were the people that he pardoned on January 6th? And how many of those people now have already been rearrested and they're going back to prison? And what about the Proud Boys? What about these, crazy people with the militant groups? What about those people and the hatred that they have for certain Americans?
Gee, Pat, it's almost
that.
It's almost like you're saying the election was about bigotry, not about costs. Was costs just the excuse?
No,
with an underbelly of bigotry? Is that what happened there?
No, you're right. There were a lot of people who did go over to the Trump camp because there was a certain amount of ignorance, because they did not understand the economy that was inherited by Joe Biden, the strength of the economy by the time of the election versus at the time he took it over, versus Trump and the strength of the economy that Obama had handed him, that was constantly in an upward motion, and that he continued for a little while. Then it started to come down a little bit, and then COVID hit. And because he handled that in such a dastardly fashion, the economy when Joe Biden took it over was ridiculous. But it became one of the strongest economies in the entire world, because the entire world suffered from the global pandemic. People got really upset about the price of eggs. And people didn't realize, enough people didn't realize, that a huge part of that was avian flu. But because of the previous administration, because of the ongoing MAGA and Trump rhetoric about the distrust of government, period, and how they're going to change it all, God, they have, the distrust of government when it comes to things like the avian flu or any health emergency, they became distrustful of the government. Yeah, prices were way too high. What are prices like today? When I went grocery shopping this past week, I paid $3 for celery. $3
Really?
for celery. I mean,
did you want it that badly?
Yeah.
I think I'll let the celery go. We don't need the celery.
I needed celery, but you know what I did? I also bought celery seed when I got home. And I planted it in my garden, and I'm lucky enough to have a garden where I can grow a lot of vegetables. But, things are ridiculously expensive. And Trump didn't have a plan for that, which is another thing that you wonder what these people were thinking. Trump didn't have a plan for really bringing down prices. His plan is the tariffs, which are going to make things substantially worse, and they already have gotten worse. So It was because they were mad at Biden because they had to pay so much for eggs without realizing that this was a temporary circumstance, or should have been a temporary circumstance, as a result of avian flu. And that the government should then get involved and try to do something to help the poultry ranchers. Are they called egg farmers? You're in Petaluma.
Egg farmers.
Egg farmers.
Poultry farmers.
So to try to help them to recover from that, like Obama did with the car industry.
We call them chicken ranchers.
All these people who were buying into Trump's nonsense and his lies about what the Obama administration was all about. Yeah, I mean, there was just so much that people focused on that really wasn't key to what their everyday lives were. And their everyday lives, they were willing to blame it on Biden because he was the one who was in power at the time. And then by virtue of that, they blamed it on Kamala Harris. Where would they be? Where would we be today if Kamala had been elected president? Every single person in this country would be better off, except Elon Musk.
I'm reminded of the moment in the election where Trump was at one of his golf courses and came out of this, mansion-looking clubhouse. And he stood in front of a table with all of these grocery items on it and pretended as if he knew the price of milk or the price of eggs or the price of, crackers or whatever it was, and talked about how he's going to bring these prices down. Like, this is what he's going to do. And it's just such a stunt. He doesn't care about the price of your groceries. As you mentioned before, all he cares about the money he can stick in his pocket.
Did you see on the Daily Show, the thing they did about, maybe it wasn't the Daily Show, maybe it was John Oliver, but the thing they did about him constantly using the word groceries like it was a brand new word. Like, people haven't heard this word. This is an old word, but people don't use this word. And then they showed people going into grocery stores or standing outside, and they'd say, "What kind of market is this?" And they'd go, "Grocery store." It was very funny.
You mentioned Elon Musk, and I wanted to throw this story at you because it's just so weird. William writes, the Wall Street Journal did a story today about Musk's multiple children and his efforts to populate the world. And thank you, William, for bringing that up, because let me tell you the story of how Musk rather, sorry, they're kind of interchangeable, how Musk is trying to find his baby mamas. He's going on X, his platform, and he's finding these ladies who maybe are, supporting Trump or somehow ideologically aligned with him. And he talks to them for a little while. And then he says, "Hey, I'll give you a few million and child support if you'll have my baby." And then they meet up and they do what they do. And then the women have his baby, apparently. He's messaging women on his platform to solicit them to have his babies for a legion of intelligent children as a mission to save civilization. Like, if this guy isn't going off the deep end and Dr. Evil all the way, I don't even know. Like, he's got at least 14 kids that we know of.
Right.
And he says he wants to build a legion of children because he believes civilization is going to crumble because of declining birth rates. And there are multiple sources, according to the Wall Street Journal, who claim he has used X to find and meet women for the purpose of having more babies. And Musk responds to this. Is it the WSJ or is it TMZ? He says it's salacious gossip. And yet there's documented cases by these women who are coming forward and saying, yeah, he offered me money to have a baby with him as well.
Well,
you get $15 million and then you get child support. Wow.
When I mentioned that he's a Nazi, have you, did you see the movie or read the book, The Boys from Brazil?
Yes.
That's what it is. It's the same thing, except he's actually delivering his sperm in person.
Easy.
I mean, it's so incredibly creepy.
Yeah.
But, when you're talking about the people in the MAGAverse or QAnon people, when you're talking about those people, I think that especially if you're going to give them millions, they would be very happy to spread their legs and then to start, popping out babies. I mean, most women realize that getting pregnant and having children is an enormous responsibility, and it's also an enormous toll on your body. And we do it because we really, really want to have children. You and I both know that. We really, really wanted to have children for a long time. I mean, for me, for a really long time. And so those, I think, are, I mean, to me, I mean, I feel like that's one of the reasons I'm so dedicated to my kids, because I so wanted to have children. And I know there are women who have children who didn't intend to become pregnant, who become absolutely fabulous mothers. I'm fully aware of that. But when you're somebody who's being paid to do it, you're risking your body, you're risking your life. People still do die in childbirth. You're risking your future fertility, because that also happens when people go through pregnancy and childbirth. Not nearly as common as it used to be. But then you've got a whole life of responsibility ahead of you, and a real responsibility, and hopefully a real connection to those kids. And, you know, are you, I just don't, I don't think that, I think there are a lot of women who will do it, Kim. I think he can have his legion of little Elons running around.
One woman said she told the Wall Street Journal she was offered $15 million and $100,000 a month in child support in exchange for keeping quiet about her baby. And when she wasn't quiet, that Musk financially retaliated against their son, basically, you know, taking the money carrot away when she wouldn't keep quiet about it. I think there's a lot of women who would be like 15 mil and 100,000 a month. Sure. Why not?
Yeah, I do too. I think, unfortunately, there would be a lot of women who would do that. So, like I said, he'll have his little legion if he chooses to.
It's,
you know, when
gross.
he loses his government contracts, which I hope at some point when he has a comeuppance, I hope that's part of what will be going on. He'll still be a massively wealthy individual, but I would like to stop him from continuing to suck off the government teat of the United States. I said teat. I didn't say the other word.
You said teat. I heard it. He's just so creepy. You see these Republicans that, you know, like Vance and company, who say, you know, it's all about the family. Have all the babies and have the family and have the traditional family. And now there's this whole thing with tech bros having the so-called trad wife, the traditional wife that stays home and raises your babies. And still, they embrace someone like Musk, who's just going around spreading his seed far and wide, when that's not what they're supposed to be about, is it?
No.
They don't care.
No. I mean, no, it's not what it's supposed to be about. And, you know, the whole traditional thing, I don't care about that. I honestly think that when you have a couple, whoever that couple may be, it could be a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman, I don't care. And they decide that they want to have children. I think that they make the decision as to what they want their family unit to be. Do we want one party to stay home with the kids for the benefits that provides? And especially in their early life, there's a lot of benefits to being with your children. You know, I still am upset that one of my kids actually took his first step while I was doing this. I was in my home, but I was broadcasting from my home. I was doing a talk show. And when I found out, I mean, I wept. I was so sad because I wasn't there with my child. People are different, though. You know, some women are really anxious to get back into the workplace. Some other partners are anxious to get, sometimes both partners are anxious to do that. And they try to do it in the most responsible way and the best way that they can for their children. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily what they want to do. It's what they have to do, because it takes a lot of money to raise a family. So I don't care about any of that. I do think it's weird. It's twisted. It kind of defies the whole concept of what a family is, when all you're doing is paying somebody to be a sperm receptacle for your child, and then to act as a nanny to that child.
For me, it's about the hypocrisy. trying to spread one message, and then you have the face of the tech bro movement going around saying, here's money, have my babies, have them all.
Right. Have them all.
Have them all. Have all the babies.
And what hurts me is women going, okay.
Sure, why not?
And I understand it, especially if you're somebody who needs the money. I understand it, but it breaks my heart, and it's really a creepy thing to do. I don't think it's illegal. I mean, is it prostitution?
Kind of.
But then again, I kind of support legalized prostitution. So.
Let's move to a topic that we talked about. You mentioned earlier, and this is in regards to deportation and immigration, and this battle that is being kind of set up between Trump and the courts that we're seeing play out now. How the courts may be holding Trump administration officials in contempt. I had a video of Hakeem Jeffries. He says what's happening with with Trump isn't normal. And he wants to see the courts really hold the Trump administration to the fire on this one and not back down. I have a lot of worries that the courts don't have as much recourse as they think in this, but let's take a listen to Hakeem Jeffries.
We're in a crisis across the board, right? I mean, that is obvious for everyone to see. This is not normal. The president is assaulting the economy, assaulting Social Security, assaulting healthcare, assaulting the American way of life, and assaulting our democracy. None of this is normal. The Supreme Court needs to aggressively enforce its judicial orders. The White House is seeking a confrontation with the courts, then the courts need to lean into that. We will have the back of the courts, and it needs to use all of the tools available to it, like contempt,
for example,
in terms of the people within the administration who are failing to adhere to these judicial orders or who are actively continuing to propagate unlawful or unconstitutional actions at Donald Trump's direction.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. What I know and can tell you, Pat, is that yesterday we saw that a U.S. judge has found probable cause to hold Trump officials in contempt over these acts of deportation that the courts have said stop, or you must facilitate the release of this person who you've admitted was deported as an administrative error,
right,
and that these orders are being ignored, defied, what have you. So I agree. The courts need to step up, but can they? And as the anchor mentioned there, how do the courts do this? How do they make sure that their orders are followed?
So the judge can certainly find them in contempt, and he likely will. My understanding, but talk to David Katz about this.
I will.
My understanding is that once that somebody is found in criminal contempt of court, it's then referred to the Department of Justice for prosecution. This Department of Justice is not going to prosecute any members of the Trump administration. In that case, again, talk to David Katz. My understanding is the judge has the authority to appoint a prosecutor that he chooses, not from the DOJ. He finds another prosecutor that he can appoint to prosecute the case. So if they don't get cooperation from the Justice Department, it's not necessarily the end of it. And if those individuals are found guilty, they suffer the consequences, which sometimes is censure, sometimes is some sort of a fine, sometimes it's jail time, and often it is jail time, or it could be a combination of those things. But again, talk with David. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't know, but this is something that I believe is the reality. These cases, I mean, at some point in time, we're going to have to see a Supreme Court that is willing to make decisions that go against Donald Trump. And I think there was one decision, I can't remember which one it was, where it really was against Donald Trump. They made the decision concerning the facilitation. And so that was different from what the judge had ruled. And it was a matter of the terminology, and a lot of punditry said they were throwing Trump a bone by doing that. But that was a unanimous decision, which is rare. But they have to start actually looking at the Constitution, and I want to believe that they will. I mean, I think that we've gotten Coney Barrett to start doing it in limited cases. I think there's hope that John Roberts, he has done it on a couple of occasions. I think Brett Kavanaugh has done it on a couple of occasions. They're not doing it as often as they should. They're not always doing it at the same time, but we have seen them break ranks with the other three. Those other three should not be on the Supreme Court, and it would be a huge, big deal. See, one of my continuing complaints about the function of our government in the modern era is that it's filled with a bunch of sissies. And by that, I mean people who don't take bold and aggressive action. You know, one of the reasons I supported Bernie Sanders for president and contributed to his campaign and loved him, he had these massive rallies everywhere. They were being ignored by the press. He was so freaking popular. One of the reasons I supported him was because he sees it, he speaks the truth, and he wants bold action. Democrats have not been known for bold action. Obama was forced to take some when the housing crisis hit. And thank God that he was able to take some bold action. But it's not typical of Democrats to do this. Trump is, but his actions aren't improving the lot of the American citizenry. It's improving the lot of the billionaire class. So my dream is that in the midterms, the Democrats take a supermajority in the Senate. The Democrats have a majority in the House, that an impeachment of the president is brought. It's referred to the Senate, or it's voted on, it's passed, so he's impeached. It goes to the Senate for trial, and that the Senate finds him guilty, convicts him, and throws him out of office, and then brings criminal charges against him. And then they move to the court and they impeach those three members of the court. And there's good reason. There's actually good reasons to impeach those people and get them out. The issue would be, if you do it when Vance is the president, it's not going to be real helpful, because he's going to point people who suck. And so he's going to replace the bad ones with other bad ones. But, but that's my dream, is that Democrats are going to say, all right, this ship is on its side and it's about to sink. We're looking at a Titanic here. And what are we going to do in order to right this ship? We can't be getting buckets and trying to get the water out of the ship with the buckets. We've got to take some really bold action here. What are we going to do?
I just don't know if that's going to realistically happen. We're 3-4 months into a Trump administration, a second Trump administration. Already, look how bad it is.
Yeah.
You would think right now that it's so bad that members of Congress would be taking action, that there would be some movement in this.
But the Republicans control the Congress. They control the White House, and they control the Supreme Court. So they control all three branches of government, and they're not going to take the bold action against this president that is necessary. And the Supreme Court, if they don't, start doing something, they're going to pave the way for more of his authoritarian behavior.
The scary part to me is, how bad does it have to get to envision a Congress controlled by whatever party that will stand up, that will put the fear aside that Murkowski was talking about earlier, and will stand up and take action. And I think it has to get so bad that we might not be able to come back from it.
What would be the really bad thing that would have to happen? I mean, I don't know. I thought there was, okay. Initially, I thought Trump, there were so many things where I thought Trump was dead in the water. When he mocked the reporter with the disability,
Sure.
when he
Grab him
when
by
he
the pee.
attacked the family of Gold Star families, when he attacked military people, the dead soldiers, suckers and losers. I thought he was dead in the water. There were so many times when I thought nobody is going to tolerate this coming from this guy. But now he's willing to take on Social Security. He's willing to take on Medicare.
He said, Pat, that he's willing to send United States citizens that have committed a crime to El Salvador.
Homegrown is what he said.
What?
And they don't necessarily have to be convicted, because he's willing to send people away who haven't been convicted, who have simply been accused. And there's something, and I meant to look this up before I came on with you, and I forgot to do that. So you have great audience. So I'm going to ask you to do it, because I can't do it while I'm talking to Kimmy. There is some clause in the Declaration of Independence that, as we are declared our independence from the king, from England, where I think it's one of the crimes of the king where he was sending people accused of crimes to foreign countries, or maybe they were convicted of crimes to foreign countries for their punishment. Something like that. Since I don't have it in front of me, I can't state what it was. While the Declaration of Independence is not the Constitution, it is one of our founding documents. That and the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, those things are often used in combination with the Constitution to understand the intent of the founders, and to understand, and to make your way through some of the things that can be confusing in the modern era as to what their intent was in portions of the Constitution. I think if he actually started shipping U.S. citizens out of the country, I think there would be his maggots, the people who are really staunch supporters who would support that. I think there are people supporting Donald Trump who would support summary executions of people. I believe that they would. If he wanted it, I believe they would support it. But if those things were to happen, the vast majority of Americans would not, because the vast majority of Americans are actually Americans, and they're proud of it. They're proud of our heritage. They're proud of the Constitution. They're proud of the fact that our forefathers fought and died for the liberties of this country, including the rights that we have in this country. Oh yeah, everybody wants to, condemn, criticize the ACLU from time to time until it's your rights that have been abridged. And then you want to get the ACLU on your side. So, and sometimes do they step over the line? I think there are times when their interpretations have been, a little iffy. By and large, though, they're a pretty damn good organization. I'm sure Trump is trying to get rid of them too.
Of course, anyone who even has looks at them the wrong way, they've got a target on their back. There's a U.S. senator who went to El Salvador, and it had to be a PR stunt, because he had to know he wasn't going to get in. This is Chris Van Hollen. He is from Maryland, and he went to El Salvador. He was trying to get into this prison, this mega prison from hell in El Salvador, where all of these gang members and the guy who was sent by administrative error are being held in these horrible conditions.
It's like a concentration camp.
It looks like it. They're stacked on top of each other. It looks like a horrible place to end
horrible.
up.
Torture takes place. It's horrible.
We've seen Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem stand in front of the cages of men there, and that was okay, right? And we've seen some Republican lawmakers go down there and take the tour
and do the same, have their own little photo op.
Have a photo op in front of these people that are human beings despite their hideous, horrible crimes. So maybe, I don't know, we don't use them as a political backdrop. But they've gotten in, and Van Hollen goes and he doesn't get in. They won't let him in, which, I mean, it can't be a surprise, but it's very interesting. So now he's not the only one who's
doesn't
going.
matter. It doesn't
This-
matter if he knew. It doesn't matter because he needed to do it. He needed to go down there and to make the effort
Mhm.
to, like the Red Cross would do, to make the effort. And like politicians have done in a lot of places where Americans are being held somewhere. And this guy was a legal American resident to go down there and to try to make contact, to see what the conditions were. And if you listen to Van Hollen, what he was told was that the Trump administration hasn't asked for his release.
They don't
They
want him
haven't
back.
even asked for his release. So
They
they
don't want
haven't
him.
asked for his release. And he was also told that the Trump administration is paying them to keep him
Yeah,
and paying them
millions of
all
dollars.
the people who we ship
Mhm.
down there. How much are they paying them? Who are all of these people? Do we even know that?
Right.
Did they have due process? No. I mean, there's so much wrong with what happened. And then you send them to a notorious prison where you know they're going to be tortured. And then he invites this guy, this dictator who maintains this concentration camp. You invite him to the White House. I mean, this is just
It feels like
disgusting.
something that happens in China where they spirit a person away in the middle of the night, or in somewhere in Russia where you're taken to Siberia never to be seen again. It's not supposed to happen in America. Is that the line where people are like, no, this is the United States and we don't do this? Or is it just so
haven't-
easy to point at these people as being, oh, well, they're brown. Oh, well, they must be in a gang. Oh, well, it's not going to happen to me, so it's going to be fine.
I think a lot of them probably are in that gang. And guess what? They're still entitled to due process.
Yeah.
And there are some who were not. There were some who were swept up in there. There were women, there were children who were swept up, who ultimately were brought back.
Mhm.
So there were people, who were swept up in there, but they did not have due process. That's critical. It is part of our Constitution. It is one of the things that has set America apart from other countries since our founding. And for Trump to thumb his nose at this and just do this against the judge's order, who said, do not do this. And they did it anyway because it wasn't in writing yet. And so they thought that, oh, there's a little loophole. We'll just spirit them off right now. It is thoroughly disgusting, but it is evidence of what he wants. And what he wants is to be the guy from El Salvador with, a much bigger country with much, much more power. He wants to partner up with Vladimir Putin. I'm not sure why he wants to partner up with him. I don't know if Putin has something on him, like the PP tape. I don't know if that actually exists. I don't know. But I know that he wants to be Vladimir Putin in America. So, I was hoping he would just go away and go live in a dacha in Russia under Putin's protection. But he hasn't done that. The whole thing is just so utterly revolting and anti-American. It is very hard to believe. And ultimately, if these guys had, their due process and they were convicted, they would be subject to deportation to their own countries. They would be subject to that deportation. They also would be subject, if they were to being held here in the United States, to being imprisoned in the United States, but ultimately to deportation to their home countries. But we can't just do that. Just, go through and just steal people. It was kidnapping. Kidnap people. Go against the court order.
You can, apparently, in this country. This is the showdown over the court order.
But it's not over yet.
Well, I think that this guy isn't coming back. And I think that despite the court orders, no, I don't necessarily think that, but I think that if Trump allows him to come back, it looks like there's a human display there of Trump's weakness, right? He lost this battle where he said, I don't want him back. He's not coming back. And if the guy ends up coming back, it's like a symbol of a weak moment for Trump, and he won't have that.
Yeah, it's true.
And
it's
so
true.
he'll do
So is it
anything
worth
he
it?
can.
Is it worth it to assuage his
Yeah.
ego and
Right.
to defy the United States Constitution,
Mhm.
to defy the courts, and to defy the Supreme Court? Is it worth that? And that's a question that Americans have to answer for themselves. And then if you say no, then what
Mhm.
do you do about it? Well, people are taking to the streets. People are demonstrating, and they're demonstrating in the reddest of the red states. They're demonstrating there. They're going to the town halls. They
Mhm.
are contacting their elected representatives and telling them or asking them, WTF, man, WTF.
Yeah.
My
I
phone.
was watching Pat Thurston's house. How can I help you? I was watching.
It's a call from Los Angeles. Los
Oh,
Angeles
look
is
at that.
calling.
It's Mark Thompson calling. I'll let you go in a minute because I know I'm probably over my Pat Thurston time. But I do want to tell you that I was watching CNN and Maggie Haberman was saying this confrontation between the courts and Trump, they want it. They want to have this confrontation. They're looking for a fight.
They who?
And-
The MAGAs?
Yeah, the Trump administration, Trump and company. This is what they want. They want this showdown.
I want to, and in normal times, I would say bring it.
Mm-hmm.
This is in normal times.
No.
And while I think the courts will win at the district level and at the appeals court level, I don't know how much they're going to win at the Supreme Court, because I think that you've got 3 very corrupt members of the court.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 who are iffy. I don't know.
I'm reminded of that interaction after Trump's recent speech to Congress, where he walks up to Roberts and he says, "Thank you so much. I won't forget this."
I won't forget it.
Yeah.
But after that, Roberts ruled against him
Mm-hmm.
in a case. I don't remember which one, but he did rule
Yeah.
against him. So you don't necessarily know which way he's going to go. And this whole thing about his immunity, it was a limited immunity. But I do think that that's another decision that, there have been a number of decisions that the Supreme Court has made in the past that future courts then realized were so out of line
Mm-hmm.
with what, the Constitution stands for.
Yeah.
There's just so many. Was it Plessy v. Ferguson was the segregation one that was overturned with Brown v. Board of Education? But there are a lot of different things. And I think this presidential immunity is one. I mean, this court overturned Roe.
Yeah.
So Supreme Court decisions can be overturned by future courts. They're not going to be overturned by the same court that enacted it, which is a shame. It's a real shame that that's the truth.
I want to show you one more video before you go.
Okay.
I've got a video from Southern California of the schools chief there saying ICE tried to get into a school in Los Angeles to do a well check on these little kids. Like, we're talking first, second grade kids.
Yeah, 1st to 6th grade, I think he said.
Yeah, it was. I'm flabbergasted that this is what we're doing. That we're becoming a country where you can go after little kids. And I think Albert's got the video of this. These men trying to check on these kids at school. Let's take a look.
18 past the hour last week, DHS officials attempted to enter 2 public Los Angeles elementary schools, asking to speak to several children. The department said they were conducting wellness checks on the children. School officials turned them away, however. Joining us now, Alberto Carvalho, superintendent of the Los Angeles Unified School District and a personal friend of mine whom I very much admire. Alberto, thank you for being with us this morning. So what exactly happened in these schools?
Good morning, Jose. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to see you. Look, last week we had about 4 to 5 agents showing up at 2 elementary schools 2 hours apart. We believe it was the exact same team asking for access to students ranging in grade from 1st through 6th grade. Obviously, we trained our principals, our support staff in denying access to students. without a judicial warrant, a criminal warrant signed by a judge. I would find it very difficult to believe that a first grader or a second grader would have committed some type of crime that would require some interaction with a federal agency. So the principals asked for identification from these individuals. They did produce IDs. When the principals attempted to write information from their IDs, they quickly pocketed those IDs, conveying to the principals that that was not allowed. And then they actually conveyed to the principals that they wanted to meet with the students and they had parental permission from these students' parents to have access to them, which is counterintuitive since they did declare in a statement that was produced by the Department of Homeland Security after this incident that their reason for being at the schools was because these students were unaccompanied minors. By the way, we made contact with the guardians of these children. In no instance, at no point was that access granted to these federal agents.
Thank
So,
you, Albert.
I want to be very
it.
clear, Super.
So let's talk about it for just a minute on your way out, Pat. This is where we are. We've got Homeland Security folks or ICE folks coming in trying to get these kids out. I mean,
this was according to the Department of Homeland Security after the fact. This was not an immigration attempt. This wasn't an immigration action. They lied when they went in. They didn't say when they went in that they were doing a wellness check. That superintendent had indicated that, wellness checks are appropriate to do. They lied about having parental permission. Thank God that the schools were prepared and did not grant access. The fact that they would not allow the principal to write down the information on their identification is absolutely screwball. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think Homeland Security is run by Kristi Noem, the dog killer. I think that these are hideous times. And I do believe that they're lying, that this was an attempt to take control of those unaccompanied minors and to send them, to deport them, to send them back somewhere.
That's
These
right.
little children. I mean, how old is a first grader? 6?
6 and 7 years old. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
God almighty. They already are unaccompanied minors. They already, have gone through trauma in their lives. And then to have these individuals come in, it is screwball. It should be completely against the law, and it probably is, but Homeland Security is now attempting to give them some sort of cover, some sort of legal justification for the actions. They went into 2 separate schools to do this. They believe that the same squad that went into the first school then went to the second school. They were denied access in both because their teachers have been properly trained. Thank you, teachers, for protecting your children when the parents cannot be there in order to provide that protection. And this is where we are today. This is a very, very frightening place. Most people in America aren't going to hear this story, Kim. We think that everybody hears the same stories we do, or they read the same stories we do, or they have the same information we do. And that is just not true. I wish it was, but it is not true. And if the Trump administration has anything to do with it, our media will start sounding like One News, whatever that stupid station.
OAN or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, One America News, I guess, and Fox. It's going to sound like that. It's just going to be a propaganda tool for his dictatorial regime to utilize to trick people, to misinform people, and anybody who dares speak the truth is going to face jail time or worse. So, this is what's coming up. Yeah, this is what's coming up, and you're seeing the evidence of it. Maya Angelou once said, when people tell you who they are, believe them. You're being told every single day, multiple times in a day, about a multitude of issues, who these people are, who Donald Trump is, what he wants, what his goals are. Watch what he does and believe him, and then do something about it.
Somebody
Get out.
needs
Go to the protests. Go to the protests that
Yeah.
are taking place everywhere. If there's a town hall meeting, go to it. Run for office. David Hogue right now is working his butt off to try to get Democrats to challenge Democrats who are sitting on their butts, who are just enjoying the position of being an elected congressperson and who aren't really doing anything on our behalf. They're not taking the bold action that they should. And so he thinks that the Democratic Party, and he's now an official in the, is it the DNC or the DLC, whichever one it is. I don't like the DLC, but whichever one it is.
Mhm.
And so he's saying we need to start supporting the people who are going to challenge these individuals who aren't doing anything for us. And I agree with David Hogue. That needs to happen. And who's to say it shouldn't be you, Kim? Who's to say it shouldn't be Mark Thompson? Who's to say it shouldn't be David Katz? I would vote for David Katz on.
I would always vote for David Katz. Pat Thurston, you need to get your own YouTube.
Do this.
You need your own talk show on YouTube. You need to get out there again. We need your voice. Noe Marie with $5. Pat Thurston. So many people are excited to hear from you. Pamela Kirby at the beginning of all this put down 5, said we can't wait to hear from Pat T. Got a message from Chaplain Fred with a 20. Says, thank you, Miss Thurston, providing such great info. I agree with you regarding people that would support executions. He says, look at the January 6th rioters. It's my hope people stop feeling afraid of standing up to Trump.
Yeah, because we have the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And Congress people have the numbers to do the right thing. Sausalito Steve
with $10 says great information and a very special show.
Thank you.
are
I retired, Kim.
No, you're coming back. I'm bringing you back over and over again, Pat Thurston. You're not retired.
And I'm happy in my retirement. I wasn't doing a talk show on KCBS. I was reading the news, and while I appreciate being on the air, I needed more. And so at this point, I'm happy in retirement. I am going to be at the Commonwealth Club the end of the month. I'm going to, or the end of May.
Okay.
And I'm interviewing an author. Her name, I think her name is Joan Williams. I don't know. I haven't read her book. They're sending me the book, but it has to do with some of what we've been talking about. It has to do with what Democrats need to do. And I'm hoping that she's going to give us some real insights and some real good, solid stuff we can glom onto. And you know who else is speaking about what Democrats can do? My old pal, Ralph Nader. You need to get Ralph on, Kim.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Well, I'm grateful that you came on today. I've been missing you something fierce. So thank you for being on the show.
All right, you and Noe and I, we're going to go out to lunch.
We're going to do it. All right, Pat Thurston. I hope I see you soon.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Pat Thurston. Such a great moment to have her, such a great hour to have Pat Thurston on the show. I honestly could go 5 hours with her, as we used to do on KGO regularly. But I have our former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, David Katz, waiting in the wings, and there's a lot to talk about with David Katz today as well. Yep.
The Mark Thompson Show.
As Mark often says, you hear him around the globe on all the English-speaking stations and maybe some Spanish-speaking stations as well. It's David Katz, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, and what a tough act to follow, Pat Thurston. You know, Pat, you and I were on the radio station that shall not be named, starting about 7 years ago, the three of us, and she was gracious enough to get me in there between now Senator Schiff and then Speaker Pelosi. So it was such a lineup she used to have, and it was all, then she was dealing with the pandemic, and she had all of those guests on who knew all about virology and all of that. She had the astronomer, and it was just a fantastic lineup. And so I miss her terribly, and I actually got to meet her in Berkeley with her daughter and a couple of friends who were going.
Fun.
Yeah, we had a wonderful time. It was after a football game up there, and we all had a drink. And Pat and I didn't pay any attention to anyone else because it was the first time we'd ever met, but we'd been on the radio together. And so we just had a wonderful conversation and so much to catch up on and know about her background and for her to know about mine. And so this is actually, that was the only time that I've actually met her face to face, but I just saw her, right? Yeah. She was just on right before me.
That's right.
And so all the best to Pat. And, you know, Pat should absolutely have a show. I think if she had a good producer and someone to help, move it along. But people love to hear her voice and her ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been too long since we did.
Way
But
too long.
I'm grateful to have you on the show because I had a question that popped up yesterday, and it has to do with what happens if a president and the federal government fail to follow a judge's orders. And what recourse do the courts really, truly have? And I have this scenario. There's this judge, Paula Xinis, and she is one of the judges involved in the deportation case of Abrego Garcia, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And she had asked for a status report, basically. What is the Trump administration doing to facilitate the return of this man? And no response, crickets. She gets nothing from the Trump administration. And so she says yesterday, all right, I'm going to require 4 Trump administration officials to come and testify from State Department, from Department of Homeland Security, from ICE. You guys are going to have to come and you're going to have to sit here and tell me what you're doing to facilitate this man's return. My question is, if those Trump administration officials ignore her orders to come testify, can't Trump just pardon them? And so really there's no recourse at all?
Well, that's such a great and complicated question, Kim. Can I give you a sort of a bit of a historical answer?
Please.
President Andrew Jackson had the famous Trail of Tears, where Native Americans were forced to go from one state to another. They were dispossessed without compensation. They were treated terribly. The case went to the Supreme Court in the 1800s, and the Supreme Court basically said, President Jackson, you cannot do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jackson famously said, the Supreme Court has made their order. Let's see them enforce it. And the failure in our Constitution, if you want to call it that, is that the president has the power of being commander in chief, and the Congress has the power of the purse. And the judiciary basically rules at the end of the day by the respect that the population has in its integrity, in its, getting the law right, and in the idea that, of course, we do what the courts say, because what the courts say is law, and we follow the law. We have a rule of law. So your question goes to the very heart of what happens when an administration is not in good faith like that, and what happens when the population is represented by Republicans, who it's not a partisan thing, but you have to just look at it and say that they've been cowardly and craven. They won't stand up for their own prerogatives, and they certainly won't stand up for the rule of law and the separation of powers. So what really happens? Now, in this case, I think that the judiciary does have an army. It's called the U.S. Marshals Service, and they can't stop the Trail of Tears or a major invasion or something outside the United States. That's a power that they don't have. Even if they had an army, that's a power that the courts don't have. But this order, this judge can enforce. So she will order those 4 people to come to court. You remember when it's Bannon and Peter Navarro refused to show up in Congress, and they didn't have a good reason. They were held in contempt, and they both served a 3-month sentence in prison. I think that's what awaits those 4 officials. And that's why I think that at the end of the posturing and performance art by Trump, they will abide by the order, because those 4 people could actually go to jail. And I think they would for criminal contempt. There's sort of a fine line between criminal and civil contempt, sort of inside baseball, but it's quite relevant to what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. Civil contempt is where you have the keys to the jail in your own hand. The idea is, until you turn over that document or until you testify, since you don't have a privilege, I'm going to lock you up. You tell me when you're going to abide by my order, and when your lawyer says you're going to abide by my order, I'll bring you back to court, and you will purge yourself of the civil contempt, let's say by testifying or by turning over the document, so you have the keys to the jail in your own hand. That's not true in civil contempt. Civil contempt, you've already committed the crime of contempt. And now the question is, once you're prosecuted and convicted of that crime, what should your punishment be? And so with Navarro and Bannon, the punishment meted out by the federal court to each of them was 3 months in custody, and they served it. So your excellent question is, we go down that road, and it happens the way that I just said. And now these 4 officials are held in criminal contempt. And at the end of the day, before they actually go into prison, Trump says, I'm giving you a pardon. And unfortunately, he can do that. Mm-hmm. It appears under the law that he can do that. There's a famous precedent called, I think, in re or ex parte Grossman. It's decided by the U.S. Supreme Court 80, 100 years ago. And the Chief Justice in the majority in that case said, if a president were to do that all the time, the president should be impeached. That seems like an impeachable offense. In other words, officials under the president are committing a crime, but the president says, you know what, I'm pardoning this, I'm pardoning that. Yes, one or two are probably something that a president can do. But if there's a pattern of that, like there would be a pattern here, Trump means to defy the law. He means to not obey it. And so through his lower officials, he grants pardon after pardon so that this investigation and these orders of the judge are completely frustrated, even though an innocent person, a person who didn't have due process, we know the government has said was wrongly deported to this hellhole prison. Will the Republicans in the Congress vote articles of impeachment? No, as things currently stand. And if they were, would the Republican Senate, along with the Democrats, would 67 of them vote to convict and remove President Trump from office? No, they would not. So he may play this out. And I guess here, Kim, the answer will be the court of public opinion. Will people be disgusted by it? And of course, one of the problems, and I don't say this lightly because I followed this case, and I guessed a little bit wrong on this case. I thought Trump would try to be somewhat of a statesman in this situation and say, you know what? We wrongly sent this one guy. Let's deal with this one guy. I got the tariffs. I got a million other problems. Everybody hates me. I've destroyed the economy. Rich people hate me. Republicans hate me. Forget people who are Democrats or independents. I got the rich and the Republicans hating me. I got all the farmers who can't sell their crops to China or other places. I can deal with this. I can get this one guy off my ledger. I thought he would get this one guy off the negative balance sheet, but no, he hasn't. So we'll see if public opinion is revolted by this. It's not the most sympathetic case because everyone says if this were you or me or Mark or Pat, there would be a totally different groundswell of public opinion. I mean, let's face it, fair or unfair. If it were you, me, Mark, or Pat, then this fellow, the allegations of MS-13 have never been proven. Now they're leaked the fact that supposedly his devoted wife made a domestic violence complaint against him 3 or 4 years ago. They probably knew that. Trump probably knew that, and they figured they were playing with house money because if things got really bad, they would release that little tidbit. So they're fighting back in the court of public opinion. But I do think the court of public opinion is going to get revolted by this, but not as much as I would think, not as much as saying, this is the rule of law. And let me just say one last thing, Miranda, we have Miranda warnings. We don't have Miranda warnings because Miranda was a saint. We have Miranda warnings because he was a guy who was in a lot of trouble with the law, but he was entitled to these Miranda warnings. So Abrego Garcia, he may have a few blemishes, but, he's the kind of person who ends up being the poster boy for our constitutional rights. And he's a good enough poster boy for me, even if he had a DV 4 years ago.
Well, you talk about the court of public opinion and the tarnished look of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Is he or is he not a gang member? He wasn't born in America. He has, these blemishes on his past to, questions about whether he and his wife, he treated women appropriately. But the question, or I think the concern is, if you don't care about his due process, then what you have is our next topic about deporting U.S. citizens. So there's a line here, a very blurry line, where if you don't care about his due process, then you don't care about people who are born here and the due process that we should have and be very concerned about, because now we have Trump for the second time saying that, even if you were born here, even if you're homegrown, if you've done something wrong, why not deport you too to this, CCOT prison in El Salvador? Trump and his administration apparently are currently studying laws to see if they are able to send U.S. citizens who commit violent crimes to prisons in foreign countries. What law would allow that? What law does it break? I mean, I feel like that's so un-American that I'm hoping that you can lay it all out, David Katz, and tell me exactly how that's illegal and why.
Well, it is totally unprecedented. So, of course, Trump glibly says, well, that's why I asked my attorney general to look into it, because it's unprecedented. The reason it's unprecedented is it so patently violates so many constitutional and even statutory rights. You know, when you get a sentence in America, actually, whether you're an American citizen or not, when you get a sentence, there are certain specifications to it. Now, we have prisoner transfer treaties with some countries. So if you're from France, and you want to serve your sentence in France, and both the United States and France agree, a French citizen could serve their sentence in France. But this idea that an American citizen, they could make a deal with France, much less with El Salvador, to send you to some terrible prison there, that would violate, your due process right, as well as the right to serve your sentence. You get sentenced to the custody of the attorney general. And, to be literal, the attorney general has no right in El Salvador. This fellow in El Salvador says, well, you can't tell me what to do. I'm from El Salvador, which is such a farce because he's taking $6 million to incarcerate these people. And if they said, we're only going to give you 5.9 million, we're not going to give you $100,000 to incarcerate that Abrego Garcia anymore, he'd be back here so fast if they weren't getting $100,000 to incarcerate him. So obviously there's all kinds of real world pressures, Kim, that they could put on him in El Salvador. But, it is true that, the attorney general doesn't have power in other countries except with leave of those other countries. So the idea that the attorney general could execute your sentence, let's say, of 7 years in federal custody by sticking you in someplace beyond federal custody, i.e. outside the United States, just on the face of it, is a violation of the statute. It's a violation of the sentence that you had been given. Now, the question is, could they say, okay, we want to send you this hellhole prison, that is your sentence? I suppose the first thing they have to do is to pass a statute that would allow that. There's no statute that allows that. I don't think that would ever win. Remember, they had filibuster. It would never win 60 votes in the Senate. It's just, it's kind of a way to terrify people, own the libs, all that kind of stuff that Trump lives for as a performance artist. And so I just don't think that this would really go anywhere. And, I think, what he really would like to do in these terrorism cases, if he wanted to make an example of somebody. Now, I tell you, people don't want to serve the rest of their life in prison. So could he get somebody to agree to serve 5 years in some foreign country instead of a life sentence? Sure, right? It's like they get people to go fight fires to get a lower sentence in state prison, right? Could they get somebody to endure a lot of things, not to serve life in prison? So I suppose that's one thing he could try to do to make an example of somebody, but it would be more like the prisoner exchange thing. It would be more like you would go back to this country, and it would be for people who are from those countries. I just don't see it working with any American citizens, although at some point, he could do a performance. Somebody would agree to 2 to 5 years almost in any prison to get out of a life sentence in the United States. And then he could say, you see, I sent this American citizen to some other place. You know what I mean? Incarceration for the rest of your life is so awful a prospect that people would substitute a whole lot of other scary things for it, maybe even a U.S. citizen. But as something that people need to worry about, oh my God, I'll be grabbed off the streets like that poor lady who was grabbed off the streets at Tufts in Boston. And we all saw her abducted on TV. It looked like she was being, I think she's Turkish. It looked like she was being abducted by the Turkish or Hungarian secret police, not in the United States, right? With their masks on and everything else. But this is something that Trump wants to mention to sort of scare people and own the libs. This is not a real thing.
There's another story with Trump and the courts. There's an executive order that Trump signed meant to punish a law firm, the one that sued Fox News. Remember them?
Sussman Godfrey, right? Sussman Godfrey. And if you have the money, you should go out and hire Sussman Godfrey. They beat Fox. They beat Fox for $1 billion. Fox, a huge friend of the president, everything that Trump and all of their Republican allies could do, all the propaganda they could put on TV hour after hour, day after day. Guess what? Sussman Godfrey beat them. If you want a great law firm, go hire them. Don't boycott them. Go hire Sussman Godfrey. What's your question?
This U.S. District Judge, his name is Lauren Ali Khan, from the bench, in her Washington, D.C. courtroom this week said Trump's order targeting this firm, Sussman Godfrey, was part of a personal vendetta. She said the framers of our Constitution would see this as a shocking abuse of power. And that's what he's doing, abusing power by going after anyone who could come after him. I don't know what the answer to this is. I don't know how we make this not be acceptable.
Well, the 10 largest law firms in the country wouldn't sign on.
Yeah.
And they may not be the 10 largest law firms in the country very long, especially when the Democrats come back into power. Not because they're going to be punished, but they seem to think they're going to get such a huge bounce from being friends with Trump that it's going to endure forever. And, I'm old enough to remember most of these law firms when they were smaller. Now some of them are much bigger. They expand, they contract too. And so I think that putting all of your eggs in the Trump basket was a huge mistake for those 10 law firms. I think they should have all shown solidarity and stood with the smaller firms. People say, well, of course, those lawyers at the 10 largest law firms are up to $7, $8, $10 million a year in income per partner. And they are so upset at the idea of falling to maybe $5 or $6 million a year. It's like hearing Bernie Sanders speak, it's like, really? Yep. That's what it's all about. I mean, how about the great profession that we're in? It's just something to make money. It's just another way to make money. They might as well have all been investment bankers. That was their real dedication to the law. But again, the 10 largest law firms have not shown solidarity. They've not stood up. But the likes of this Sussman Godfrey, Jenner and Block, the big Chicago firm, Wilmer Hale, the big Washington, D.C. firm, they've all stood up. More than 500 law firms said they would stand up with them. And, the huge law firms, I guess they just start running in their mind the ways that, you can end up just losing out. You get a real $1 billion case. It's a huge merger, right? Mm-hmm. And they need government approval for this huge merger. It's $100 billion merger. Imagine what the legal fees are earned by those enormous top 10 earning law firms. They lose that piece of business because someone says, that firm, they got they're not Trumpy enough. They may be huge, they may be famous, but they're not Trumpy enough. I'll hire somebody else. And they lose the legal fees on $100 billion merger. They think, we don't want it. We'll just make our peace with Trump. And if Trump wants us to do $50 million of pro bono work, $100 million worth of pro bono work for some cause that our law firm and Trump agree on, whatever that is, helping veterans, they say is going to be one of them. That sounds like a decent one. The anti-Semitism thing, the problem, Kim, is that there's a lot of people who think that if you question Netanyahu or you question the Israeli expanding settlements all over the place, that somehow you're anti-Semitic. And so, that they're going to beat that drum for $50 or $100 million worth of legal fees. But again, if you think that you have a chance of losing the legal fees on $100 billion piece of business where you need the FTC's approval under Trump, you need the antitrust division's approval under Trump, you know what? Do the 50, do the 100 million. It's just a business decision. And the only thing I can say on behalf of those 10 huge law firms is lawyers do try to figure out how to help their client get through a very difficult situation. And this is a difficult situation for all the law firms. The most the most criticizable law firm in all of this is a victim. The perpetrator is Trump and this unprecedented action. And the last thing I want to say is that the framers of the Constitution would have been appalled by this. Mm-hmm. Many of them, probably most of them, were lawyers. They understood that if you were going to have free elections, you weren't going to have a king, that you'd be in power, you'd be out of power. And that when you were out of power, you'd be working as lawyers and not discriminated against by the group in power. You'd be working as lawyers when you were out of power. That's what Alexander Hamilton did. He was, in fact, a criminal defense lawyer. By the way, Abraham Lincoln was also a criminal defense lawyer. I'm beating the drum for criminal defense attorneys everywhere for all time in America.
I'm struck by, once again, the hypocrisy of the situation where before Trump was elected, he pointed to President Biden and said, they're using the Department of Justice as a weapon. They're weaponizing the law. And that was child's play, if it even happened, compared to what's happening now. And now you see Trump's retribution tour completely using the Department of Justice to go after anyone and anything and every molecule of life that somehow Trump feels has disrespected him?
Well, it's projection, with Trump. When Trump said he was weaponizing the Department of Justice, it's because Trump was thinking, that's what I would do. My goodness, I would sure weaponize it. All these people who annoy me, I could do tax audits of them. I could start FBI investigations of them. I could bring them up on trumped up charges. Wow, that's what Biden's doing. It's all projection. And this is so ridiculous. It's so overblown because not only was our economy great, people may remember, okay, they didn't think that Biden was too old, he was too uncharismatic. He mumbled a little bit when he spoke. He mumbled a lot when he spoke. He mumbled and stumbled. And look how great. If while we're having this conversation, if you want to look at your 401k or you want to look at the state of our civil rights in America, he didn't weaponize anything. I mean, Trump got more due process than anybody ever. Look at the cases they didn't go to trial right away. His 2 federal cases, instead of going to trial right away, they had all these motions. His January 6th case went all the way to the appellate court and it was stayed. He didn't have a trial. He didn't have a show trial. He had an appellate panel that heard him. Then he had the U.S. Supreme Court that made that very controversial, I think, unwarranted presidential immunity decision that they made. He wasn't locked up anywhere. He didn't serve a night in jail, even in the 2 state cases, 4 different cases against him. He had great lawyers. His lawyers were heard. They filed their motions. And then, of course, he had the cases. Remember this, he was convicted in the New York case. He's a convicted felon on 34 counts as we speak about him. He still had to pay that enormous amount of money to the woman for sexual assault in the New York City dressing room. That judgment still stands for hundreds of millions of dollars. I guess he's going to try to pay that out of the cryptocurrency. He's going to cash some of that crypto. The guy down in El Salvador is a big crypto guy too. I mean, the corruption here is so rank. And just one last thing on the weaponization, one of the really bad breaks that the nation had, and we sure had a lot of them recently, and our reputation around the world, and the way we kind of knifed in the side our longtime allies, the Canadians, all of the awful things that have happened. There's like too many to name. We don't have enough time on the show to even do like the 10 highlights of the terrible things that Trump has done to our reputation throughout the world. But if one of the houses of Congress had stayed Democratic, we'd be in a totally different place right now. If we had 51 Democratic senators, they wouldn't have approved Kash Patel. They wouldn't have had the nerve to even present Kash Patel. We wouldn't have Bondi as Attorney General. We wouldn't have RFK Jr. Oh my God, has he sullied the Kennedy name for people like me and you're not young. You're too young. But people like me who kind of revered the Kennedy name. Oh my God, this Kennedy Jr. That we wouldn't have had Tulsi Gabbard. None of these people would have gone through. No. And there would be if the House were Democratic, there'd be an investigation. He'd do something crazy every day like he does, and they would investigate how he planned to make money and what the corrupt angle was of it every single day. And the Republicans have sat by. They figure, well, they have another year and a half, but it's a hard rain that's going to fall in the next election. This will be one of those where both houses go Democratic, and it'll be a totally different playing field. Unfortunately, what Trump and his allies see in that, in my opinion, is let's steal while we can. Let's do inside deals while we can. And the good news is that we still have the newspapers and we still have the media. So the New York Times, the Atlantic calls them out, including on the group chat thing. I mean, that one was it could have been really dangerous for those pilots who hadn't taken off yet for 2 hours when they broadcast that to the reporter, and could have broadcast that to the world, and probably did broadcast it to our enemies. Luckily, the Yemenis, I don't think, were on the. It wasn't if it hadn't been an attack against China. Believe me, China was listening to that. China would have shot the pilots right out of the American pilots, the heroes. They would have shot them right out of the sky because they were so lax with our secrets. But it wasn't classified. If those war plans weren't secret, anybody who believes that, I have a bridge in Brooklyn, I'll sell you.
Let's talk for a moment about Harvard. You have a prestigious school, including Harvard Law School. There's a giant gaggle of lawyers at Harvard who likely won't take what Trump is trying to do to this school laying down. He's trying
Can
to
I just
remove.
can I just say the great joke? The
Please,
great,
please.
the
Yes.
great joke was Trump rejected by Harvard yet again. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. So he's going after their tax exempt status in addition to pulling billions of dollars of federal funding from Harvard. And I saw this piece. It's produced by Democracy Now, but I looked the man up. His name is Andrew Manuel Crespo, and he's a Harvard law professor, the Morris Wasserstein Public Interest Professor of Law. He'd been appointed by President Biden to serve on the Presidential Commission on the Supreme Court. He's a member of the American Constitution Society. So he's the real deal, right? And I think what he says here is chilling and interesting. Let's see the video, Albert.
That the Trump administration sent to my university Friday night that became public on Monday. One of his demands was to have the school appoint or allow him to appoint a federal overseer who would audit every course on this campus, every department, to try to figure out if it met the ideological balance that's preferred by the Trump administration. And that federal official would then require us to hire new teachers to teach the way that Trump wants us to teach, to change our courses. This is absolute outright efforts to take over federally what is taught on American campuses. It's a move that we see in countries across the globe when dictators are trying to come into power. In the demand.
Yeah, that's what we have. It's not just about DEI. It's about getting Harvard to teach what Trump wants them to teach. This is outrageous.
Well, one thing that's great is that Harvard has this enormous endowment, I think probably the largest in the country. So they certainly have the resources to fight. People said that about the huge law firms, that they had the resources to fight or to resist this pressure. And I guess you can say that, while the law firms want to project a certain image, these mega law firms want to project a certain image, they're really just about the money. They're really just about the money. And that even the image they try to project is to get the top law students to come there because it's a kind of a sales pitch to get the top law students to come there so they can all be just about the money. But the universities like Harvard are not just about the money. Nobody should be cynical enough to think that they're just about the money. They really do stand for something. They believe in something. I know I went to Berkeley, and Berkeley does, and I'm glad to see that Harvard does. And they're willing to spend some for their endowment. I don't think it's going to end up costing them any money. But Kim, the problem is they do this huge amount of medical research. They're developing cures and treatments right now for things that could affect the lives and the survival of a lot of people listening to watching your show right now. And that'll there's an obstacle, right? They'll cut off the money temporarily. They'll fight over the money, and the money needs to flow. To do the research studies, the money needs to flow. So Trump will end RFK Jr. They'll cut off the money for these. That may be what RFK Jr. wants to do. He doesn't seem to believe in any of modern medicine, or the results that you see. The unimpeachable results that you see. But he reads some quack book. Apparently RFK Jr. and says, well, let's do that with measles and not what everybody knows ought to be done to abate measles. And so what Trump's action is going to do, Harvard's going to fight and win, but in the interim, they will interrupt a lot of this research. But Harvard, I think, had no choice to keep the money flowing for the research, medically necessary and important as it is. They just couldn't give into this. I mean, what a clown college this would be. Harvard, this great institution since the 1600s, and they're gonna hire some of his know-nothings. I mean, if he's got anybody on his staff who got into Harvard, I don't know. I'd sure like to hear about it. So it seems to me that they're all a bunch of D-teamers who never had a chance to get into Harvard and think this is great fun to try to give Harvard a hard time. Like there's some comparability over that. And the idea that they could tell them what teachers to hire. Also, the DEI thing, people don't understand this DEI at all. These universities and these law firms, they do outreach to get fantastic candidates. They're supposed to not do the outreach. They're supposed to, like the colleges, the universities, they're supposed to not go to the high schools and have guidance counselors and have ways that they try to find the top graduates. Maybe there's somebody who's really smart, but just the community they're from, they don't think that they have a chance to go to Berkeley or a chance to go to Harvard. So let them know, right? Let them know that if you've got the grades, you've got the aptitude, you've got the drive, Harvard wants to see your application. Berkeley wants to see your application, or these law firms, Maybe you're going to join a public interest firm. Well, they want you to know that they have public interest at their firm and that they're interested in you. And they're interested in having, representation, a law firm that looks like the community. That is what the DEI is. This idea that they're vaulting unqualified people, or they're taking some white person's job and giving it to some DEI. Or the other thing, they're giving a woman, 60% of people graduating from law school are women, that there's outreach to hire women lawyers. Like this thing with the FAA, you remember that, where they said, oh, that crash that happened at National Airport in Washington, D.C. was DEI. And then you find out it was a woman they were talking about. Oh my God, they gave someone who was a woman a traffic controller job, and she seemed like she was absolutely terrific. There was nothing about her that made anyone ever think that she was the reason for that crash. And yet that was the immediate reaction, wasn't it, by the Trump administration?
Yep,
DEI caused the accident.
Let's switch to this lawsuit filed by the state of California, the first state to sue Trump over these tariffs. California Governor Gavin Newsom and our state attorney general Rob Bonta filing suit, arguing Trump doesn't have the presidential authority to unilaterally impose these tariffs using the International Economic Emergency Powers Act because it violates the separation of powers doctrine. Any legs on this one?
I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's just a press stunt. This is one that Newsom really wanted to get behind. He didn't just let Bonta take the credit or hog the limelight. He wanted people to know that this was Governor Newsom's lawsuit. One reason is we are the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. People don't realize that. If you did the economies of the world, you did like the USA without California, it would be like the USA, I think, would still be number 1. China would be right up there. We'd be 4th or 5th all by ourselves, California. And it's having a huge impact on us selling, us exporting. We're the bread basket, we're the fruit basket of the world, selling to China and all these countries. And that's what they always do. They retaliate against our fruits and vegetables exported from California as a way to get back at the tariffs that Trump put on the first time, and the worst tariffs, the more damaging tariffs to the economy that he's putting on this time. So we really want to be out front on that. And we do have a huge interest in our economy. So I think it may be possible to have standing. I haven't really looked at the whole thing. That would be the fear, that we don't have the standing, but we are hurt. It's not just somebody, deciding that this is a separation of powers issue. We are really hurt in a direct way by these tariffs. And the argument is that only the Congress has the power to do this. I think that the law may be on the merits that Congress has given that power to the president, with the idea that they can then repudiate the tariffs that he imposes within 30 days or whatever. That was what they were starting to do when the tariffs were on every country in the world. It looked like even the Republican Senate, I think, was willing to do that with Canada. It looked like the Republican Senate might actually do that with the other countries. Then the House went into this year-long recess, according to them, where they were never going to vote on it. That was obviously gamesmanship. But as the pressure got worse and worse, probably the House would have come around. They would have had 4 or 5 Republican Congress members who would have voted with the Democrats. So there is a way to get rid of them. And so that may be, he may lose on the merits, that it was fine for Congress, although they could have kept that power and they could exert that power in other ways. The way they exerted the power was they said, in an emergency, we'll let the president impose tariffs. You can argue that this isn't a real emergency, but in an emergency, they said you can enact the tariffs, but within 30 days, we can call them off. And within 30 days, when they were just about to call them off, Trump, surrendered. He gave his bombastic speech. He declared victory, and he surrendered basically to every country except China. 10% is still not good on every country in the world, but he basically surrendered from his threats as to every country in the world. By the way, he's got that dominant thing. He's the big primate that dominates everybody. And yet he can't get the El Salvador president to do anything. He's getting played by the president of a little Central American, what he would call a banana republic. Trump can't get the head of a banana republic to do what he wants to do. If Ivanka were down there, believe me, somehow or other, there would be a way for Trump to be the dominant, the dominant primate again. So yeah, it's very frustrating what's going on, but I don't think that. We'll see how the suit goes. I wouldn't bet on it.
I've kept you too long, but on your way out, I wanted to give you a chance to comment on this lawsuit against Meta and basically Mark Zuckerberg. The Federal Trade Commission trying to look at Meta's acquisitions to Instagram, WhatsApp, all of these things, and Zuckerberg testified. How do you see this going?
Well, you see why Musk and Zuckerberg and Bezos want to try to cripple and hobble those investigatory agencies. You see why they want to cut people, inspectors general, along with Trump, because these people have real power. And you really worry that, what did Balzac say? Behind every great fortune is a great crime. And these investigatory agencies really look at, was there a great crime? Was there, collusion? Was there market manipulation? And especially by companies with monopoly power. One of the issues is whether Zuckerberg's company has, monopoly power in this. I tend to think they do have monopoly power, but that's one of the issues for the district judge. But, it's these investigatory agencies that build up the cases, like the FTC in this situation. So a company like it's Meta, right? Mm-hmm. Meta has they have the option to either what they call buy or build. And what they're trying to show is that they did acquire all these other companies, Instagram and so forth, as a way to monopolize the market, as a way to dominate the market. And that, they made a better camera, so they decided to take over that camera. They wrote a memo that sort of is on the side of, they tried to just buy their way to a monopoly rather than to build their way to a monopoly, competing. And so it's a kind of technical to a lot of people, the testimony, but it basically as to whether they had monopoly power, and if they had monopoly power in that field that Meta and Instagram both occupy, whether they were, manipulating it to keep prices up, to restrict consumer preference, to consumer choice, so they would basically corner the market and raise prices as monopolists. And that's what these agencies are looking at. That's what the federal judge has to decide. And it looks like it's not going Zuckerberg's and Meta's way, which is, I think, why he took the stand today, because he figured, if we're going down, at least I want to testify and see what I can do in front of the judge. And I think it may not be going their way because they did exactly as charged. I mean, I don't know. People have trouble understanding that these are huge trusts. These are huge monopolies. In the same way at the turn of the century, Teddy Roosevelt went after those trusts. These are the current day trusts. These are the current day monopolies. That's why prices are so high and true consumer selection seems to be so low.
There's a breaking news story that just came out that I'll ask you about, which is that the United States Supreme Court has just announced that they will be hearing a challenge to Trump's plan to end birthright citizenship. And they will be hearing this case apparently in May. Is that surprising to you that they've decided to take this on? This one seems cut and dried to me, but maybe it's not.
It's cut and dry, but it's, I think, provocative enough. It's I think, resulted in 4 or 5 different cases. And in every single case, the judge has said that the federal judge has said the Constitution is very clear. It says born in the United States. And I mentioned this before on your show, but there's actually a precedent. It's not just in the plain language of the Constitution. This is not the original Constitution from the late 1700s. This is the one after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment. And the one after the Civil War in the 14th Amendment says that if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen of the United States, to paraphrase it. And then the decision at the turn of the century, like around 1900, early 1900s, is by a person born of parents who were not legally in the country. Parents had no status in the country, but he was born in the United States. He stopped at the border, told he can't enter the United States because he's not a citizen. The U.S. Supreme Court decided, yes, you are a citizen by the mere fact that you were born in the United States, although your parents had no proper immigration status. That seems like a cut and dry precedent. I know they did what they did in Dobbs, but I don't think they're going to reverse that precedent. And I think they're going to put that one to bed, maybe 9-0. And of course, from a PR point of view, it's good for the U.S. Supreme Court in this environment, after all the decisions they've had that were in favor of Trump, to issue a decision that people can say, look, 9-0. You see, they really are independent. They really are a third branch of government. They didn't back the president on this one. But this is a press release issue. This is send it out over the internet. This is not a real thing. There is no real prospect that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to say the Constitution doesn't mean exactly what it says, or that they're going to overturn that precedent. So if anybody's actually worried about it, if you're born in the United States, you're a citizen.
Thank you, David Katz. I appreciate that. And I'm glad we got that story in before we have to say goodbye. I'm so grateful that you came on today. I'll see you next Thursday. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all of your wise and sage opinions today.
Next time you have me and Pat Thurston on the same day, have us have a little overlap, okay?
I will. I'll do it. I'll have a little meetup here on the Mark Thompson Show.
All the best to Pat Thurston, and all the best to you, and the best to Mark.
Thanks, David Katz. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye. Bye. Kept him a little too long, but he's so good.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So good. Every week on Thursday, you'll see former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney, David Katz right here on the Mark Thompson Show. There are some people to thank, Albert, because a lot of contributions have come through, and I'm so grateful to truly my favorite McAllister. That's saying a lot because I know a lot of McAllisters. Lucy McAllister with $20. Thank you so much for the contribution to the show. We appreciate your support so much. This show is crowdfunded. We really couldn't do it without you. Yeah, that's why we've been able to make this happen because of things like that. So huge thank you. Chaplain Fred with $5 says, "Hi Kim and Pat. Elon sounds like he's building a cult. He also sounds like the tech person from the movie Don't Look Up. Does sound like he's building a cult."
Thank you.
Isn't that what those cult members do? They impregnate all the people and they build their own little society. Creepy and weird. Chaplain Fred, thank you for the contribution to the show. Vilma popping in with $5, saying, "I think the Heritage Society would sacrifice and impeach Trump for a President Vance who's been bought and paid for." That's a scary thought. Vance seems kind of like an empty suit, and you have no idea what he'll do. Vilma also with 2 asking for Pat to come back weekly. If I could make that happen, I would. She's pretty busy, but I keep calling her and asking her. Huge thank you to Noe Marie, who helped get Pat on the show today. Mark Thompson will be back tomorrow. Albert, thank you for all of the videos and all the work you've done today. Very grateful that you're here today helping out. Thank you. And thank you to Dan as well for the nice comment. It says, "Great show, everyone, as usual." We will be back tomorrow with, of course, Jim Avila, Michael Schur, Michael Snyder, Friday Fabulous Florida. It all goes down right here with Mark Thompson back in the captain's seat on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, and we had to see what Mark had to say about his little excursion this week and how the art went, because I think he was talking about it a little bit as he was leaving.
We'll find out tomorrow right here on the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye. Thanks, Albert.